Hi, I'm Chuck Gifford, and I'll be reading you selections from this week's, December the 12th, Nantucket Inquirer Mirror. Our first story comes from the top of the front page and is headlined, Power Outage Cripples Downtown Businesses During Christmas Stroll. It's Devastating, by Kay Quigley. December 11th. A grim realization set in for proprietor's bar and table owner Orla La Scala this weekend, after a 30-hour power outage crippled half of downtown, including her India Street restaurant, during Christmas stroll. There's no way for us to make up this loss, La Scala said on Sunday. She and her husband Michael and their business partner Anna Wargis were planning on hosting a full house both days stroll weekend, including a closing brunch on Sunday, but weren't able to serve a single plate during the outage. Proprietors was one of over a dozen bars and restaurants that had to cancel their stroll service after going without power for over 24 hours. The outage occurred Saturday morning around 10:20 a.m. before the annual Christmas stroll parade, and power was restored by National Grid around 2 p.m. on Sunday. The company said it was caused by two sections of faulty underground electric cable that serviced the area. National Grid is investigating the cause of the cable failures and whether or not other cables on island also need to be replaced, spokesperson Bob Keever said on Sunday. Retail businesses closed early because customers and staff couldn't see in the dark and struggled to accept credit card payments by writing down numbers or taking pictures of cards with cell phones until their batteries died. Hundreds of dining reservations were canceled throughout downtown Saturday and Sunday, including all of the tables booked at proprietors. We were going to do the max that we could. We didn't have a seat left, not one, La Scala said. Kitchen staff had prepped food for dinner Saturday, but it all had to be discarded, La Scala said, because they had nowhere to store it properly during the outage. Town health code does require restaurants to discard food that is not stored at the proper temperature for more than 6 hours. Sunday's brunch food was prepped and stored at proprietor's sister restaurant, Black Eyed Susan's, nearby, while they waited for the power to come back on. Black Eyed Susan's, also owned by the La Scalas and Wargis, never lost power because it is connected to a different part of the downtown power grid. They were forced to cancel their brunch plans anyway, however, when they found themselves still without power on Sunday morning. La Scala felt sorry for the customers they couldn't serve and also the staff they brought back to the island in anticipation of the busy weekend. Those people have paid for travel and lodging to be here, and they've also lost a huge amount of money. The effect is just massive, she said. She empathizes with the other downtown businesses affected by the outage. To see small businesses have a loss of income that would carry them through the winter, it's devastating, La Scala said. Because we're an island, we're extremely restricted in our ability to bounce back when something like this happens. Christmas stroll is one of the most lucrative weekends of the year for downtown businesses, La Scala said, even compared to the busiest summer weekends. The difference between summer and stroll is that people aren't at the beach. You have a captive audience for a weekend like this. People are in town, they're shopping, they need somewhere to be all day. It benefits the retailers and the restaurants to have a full day of service, she said. We're very upset. It's extremely hard to navigate the loss of business to this extent at this time of year. The Chamber of Commerce is going to have to do an awful lot of work to build up confidence in this festival again. Businesses on the west side of Main Street down to parts of Straight Wharf, South Water Street, Easy and Broad Streets were affected by the outage. Main Street stores like the Hub booted up their registers with generators so they could still make sales. Lemon Press operated with no lights and only accepted cash, and Aunt Leah's Fudge stayed open through the outage using the light from cell phones. An estimated 15 or more restaurants could not serve customers Saturday night and Sunday, including Proprietor's Bar and Table, the Rose and Crown, the Pearl, Nautilus, Gaslight, Sister Ship, Nantucket, and other popular downtown restaurants. All restaurants and bars without power were prohibited from staying open past 4:30 p.m. Saturday due to safety concerns. Select Board Chair Brooke Moore said the impact of the power outage will be discussed at the board's weekly meeting Wednesday evening. Too late for this edition of the Inquirer Mirror. Find coverage online at act.net. Quote, "It's economically significant, if not devastating, to some of the businesses who are affected, both shorter term and longer term," Moore said on Monday. On a weekend that they planned staffing, invest in advertising, they find food. "We don't know what the total impact will be financially, but it's obviously of great concern," end quote. Downtown business owners who made claims of financial loss to National Grid following the incident were told they wouldn't be covered, according to social media posts showing the replies. The electricity provider cited a clause in its terms and conditions that absolves it from liability for, quote, "any special, indirect, or consequential damages whatsoever, including but not limited to loss of profits or revenue, loss of use of equipment, cost of capital, cost of temporary equipment, overtime, business interruption, spoilage of goods, claims of the customer, or other economic harm," end quote. Quote, We'll know a lot more in the coming weeks and figure out accountability where it rests, what can be done, and how we can, as a community, support friends and neighbors who own and run these businesses," Moore said. The board supports local businesses and the importance of Stroll, both as a community event and a community building event, and as a part of the economic engine of Nantucket. It's a part of a reality. It's become a really relied upon time of revenue for businesses to make it in a seasonal economy. So figuring out what the impact is and if there's any way to have it mitigated is obviously important, end quote. The Chamber of Commerce responsible for running the iconic island event released a statement addressing the situation on Sunday. Quote, "We recognize this has had a negative impact on our business community. We are reminded of our responsibility to support our local businesses in any way possible. In the coming days, we will continue to explore any and all options to guide businesses in any recovery efforts. We highly encourage patrons to support affected businesses by shopping if available, purchasing gift cards or other merchandise online, and keeping spirits high. We were intending the 50th anniversary of Stroll to showcase the island's charm and holiday traditions, and when this weekend has gone off script, we appreciate that the Nantucket traditions of resilience and support on display these past 30 hours," end quote. An estimated 236 National Grid customers were still without power Sunday morning prior to it being restored. That was down from the estimated total of about 1,400 that initially lost power on Saturday. Excuse me. Countless Christmas Strolls visitors had their plans ruined as a result of the outage. Heather Leonard, Maria Meyer, Lynn Callanan, and Amy Resendez traveled from central Massachusetts for the day to celebrate Stroll. They had 5 p.m. dinner reservations at Proprietor's Saturday and had nowhere to go when the restaurant couldn't open. Restaurants that did have power in the downtown area had lines out the door because they were at capacity, so they couldn't get in. "It's just frustrating to not be able to grab something to eat or drink or sit. It's cold outside," Callanan said around 5:30 p.m. Saturday. "Now we're stuck for 2 hours. Worst yet, their 7 p.m. boat was canceled, so they had an even longer wait ahead of them than they planned. Thankfully, though, they were able to get their Main Street shopping done early in the morning," they said, before things went awry. Some visitors wondered why there was no backup power supply for downtown businesses that couldn't be switched on Saturday. National Grid has a backup power bank of Tesla battery storage units on the island that is coupled with 2 diesel generators. The batteries were installed in 2019 to bolster the town's energy reserve in the event that undersea cables connecting the island to the mainland malfunction, leaving Nantucket with power limited or no power at all. They reserve the right. That reserve was no help to National Grid this weekend, however, Kiever said, because the issue was with a localized underground cable that distributes the power to customers. Adding power to the grid would not have helped because that electricity wouldn't have reached any. Continuing on the front page, our next story is headlined, Concom Signals Approval for Sconset Bluff Geotube Expansion by Dean Geddes. December 6th. The massive expansion of erosion control efforts on the Sconset Bluff is one step closer to reality after the Conservation Commission last week voted to provide the project with the necessary waivers to move it forward. The joint application by the town and Sconset Beach Preservation Fund to expand the geotextile tubes at the base of the bluff from the project's current 900-foot length to nearly 5,000 feet has been in front of the Commission since January. The Commission will continue to work its way through an order of conditions for the project before taking a final vote on whether to allow it to ultimately proceed. But Wednesday's vote was the first real indication of how commissioners feel about the proposed project that they've been holding hearings on for nearly a year. Seth Engelborg was the lone dissenting commissioner, saying he felt the project adhered to the terms laid out in the state's Wetland Protection Act, but it did not satisfy the requirements of local bylaws. I believe there's reasonable alternatives that can be done on this site, and there will be adverse impacts, he said in explaining his decision. The other four voting members of the commission, Mike Mizzarelli, Linda Williams, Joe Plandowski, and Tim Brain, all voted that the project met the waiver requirements in both the Wetlands Protection Act and the local bylaws. New commission members R.J. Turcotte and John Schaefer recused themselves. The existing 900-foot geotube project is currently under a removal order that is on hold while the Concom hears the request for expansion. The order came after the Commission ruled the SBPF repeatedly failed to follow the order of conditions for the project, most notably failing to replenish the bluff with enough sacrificial sand. Since the removal order was issued nearly 3 years ago, the project has received little or no care as it sits in limbo, and that has the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy up in arms. Quite frankly, it is the worst possible environmental situation imaginable. A virtually abandoned 900-foot seawall on a public beach that is causing harm. To make matters worse, it's now December and the beginning of the oncoming storm season, Conservancy President Burton Spruce Balkan wrote in a letter to the Commission. He also pointed out that even as the Commission debates the proposed expansion, appeals are likely, and during that time the project will continue to sit unmaintained for months, if not years. If the Concom does approve the expansion of the overall project, it would still require approval by town meeting voters. The Commission will hold its next meeting on the matter in January on a date to be determined. Continuing on the front page, our next story is headlined, Planning Board Approves $104 million Plan for New Our Island Home by Kay Quigley. December 10th. The Planning Board on Monday unanimously approved the updated design for a new $104 million Our Island Home nursing home on the Sherburne Commons property off South Shore Road despite concerns from neighbors. It seems like nobody cares about making the people on South Pasture Lane, who are the most impacted by this, happy. You're making people at Sherburne Commons happy, but not us, South Pasture Lane resident and former Planning Board member Linda Williams said on Monday. She's concerned about the parking arrangement proposed in the updated plans for the 50,000 square foot, 45-bed nursing home that would replace the current facility on East Creek Road along the waterfront. Because of this mess with staff housing, the parking has been changed and it's been shoved all the way over to us, Williams said. 2 buildings used as staff housing for Sherburne Commons currently sit on the lot, where the nursing facility is proposed to be built. Those buildings would be moved near the wastewater treatment facility at the end of South Shore Road, while the nursing home and new employee housing are built on the Sherburne Commons property. The original plans called for the new housing to be built on another part of the property, but residents of the elder living community didn't want construction going on in two places at once. Designers were forced to move the footprint of the nursing home closer to South Shore Road and shift some of the parking spaces closer to South Pasture Lane in order to make space for the housing on the same lot. All of the parking spaces were facing east and west before designers had to rework the layout. Now some are proposed to face south towards properties on South Pasture Lane. Williams doesn't like that. She also doesn't like that the nursing home is now proposed closer to South Shore Road because she's worried there won't be enough screening to block it from passers-by. Many of the trees between the building site and South Shore Road will have to be cut down under the newest proposal. The town and its contractors received a waiver Monday from the planning board from the requirement to leave at least 75 feet of vegetation between the building and South Shore Road. "We're taking away half of our screening to get this building in there," Williams said. She's also worried about what the hours of construction for the project will be once it begins because she doesn't want work happening late at night. Neighbor Kate Raphael said that she didn't like how big the facility was and how it seemed squeezed onto its lot, the lot it's proposed for. She also worried about the traffic flow, given the fact that there's only one access point. Select Board member Dawn Hill said that any outstanding grievances from neighbors after the approval will be addressed, but emphasized the urgency in moving the process forward. "If there are any concerns that come from neighbors, if I'm still involved, the town will absolutely address them," Hill said. "But this project is really important to have settled as soon as possible to be able to make it to town meeting in the spring." Voters have already approved $8.5 million for the design and planning phase of the project, which means an estimated $96 million appropriation will need approval from voters at the May 2025 annual town meeting for the project to come forward. There's going to be some upset people through the process, unfortunately, and we'll deal with it. But it's good to hear from Dawn that the town will be very attentive, Planning Board Chair Dave Iverson said. He and other board members were not concerned with the building being closer to South Shore Road, but did impose a condition for additional screening in the parking areas facing South Pasture Lane. Craig Piper of the design firm SMRT that drafted the nursing home plans said that more outreach will be done with neighbors all the way up to and during construction of the project, tentatively planned to begin in September of 2025 if approved at town meeting. It would take an estimated 18 months to complete. In other news from Monday's meeting, the board unanimously approved plans to redesign the former Manning Physical Therapy building, now owned by A Safe Place at 19 Amelia Drive. The nonprofit won't be changing much. 2 apartments totaling 4 bedrooms on the second floor will remain, as will office spaces on the first floor. Additional office spaces will be added to the basement, and a small apartment in the basement will be converted to an emergency shelter room. There will be a total of 18 parking spaces on the property. The board also approved plans from the Great Harbor Yacht Club to move a commercial kitchen and a residence at 19 Nobodere Farm Road to make room for an additional tennis court and 2 pickleball courts at its racket sports compound at 23 Nobodere Farm Road. An additional 19 parking spaces will be added to the property, as well with valet service. Our next story is headlined, "Harbor Master Warns of Dangerous Debris at Nantucket Beach" by Joshua Balling, December 10th. Harbor Master Sheila Lucy is advising boaters, swimmers, surfers, and beachgoers that recent erosion at Nantucket Beach has exposed dangerous construction debris in the surf and shore break. The area should be avoided if at all possible. Lucy said that her staff will be monitoring the beach over the winter for the presence of additional debris. As the season gets closer, we will make some decisions about removing it if it's necessary for public safety, she said. We don't know if anything else will become exposed as the season progresses, but we will stay on it. The debris, chunks of concrete slab and metal support bars, is likely from the septic systems and wells from homes that were removed or damaged by heavy surf and erosion in the past. Our next story is headlined, Voters Looking at $600 Million in Town Spending in the Coming Years by Dean Geddes. December 12th. Taxpayers are looking at more than $600 million in municipal spending in the next few years if voters approve every one of the town's proposed major capital projects currently on the books. The high price tag asks range from coastal resilience projects to a new nursing home, the expansion of the sewer system, a new middle school, and other large town buildings. The projected spending was revealed at the presentation by Finance Director Brian Turbot early this month. My concern is people's appetite for approving these projects is lowering, Select Board member Matt Fee said. They know it's important, but they also know that they have to find a way to pay for it, and their taxes have gone up quite a bit. People around the island have gotten whacked. This year's bite, $200 million. Voters will likely be asked to approve spending on 4 projects next year, totaling more than $200 million, including nearly $100 million for a new Our Island Home nursing home, $14 million for the design and construction of town employee housing, and $6.85 million for a multi-use Tom Nevers bike and pedestrian path at the May annual town meeting, and $800 million for a new Department of Public Works facility at a special town meeting not yet scheduled, but being considered for the fall. If all 3 projects up for the vote at the May town meeting are approved, it will add approximately $432 to the annual tax bill for the average Nantucket home, assessed at $2 million with a residential exemption. That number increases as the property assessment goes up and for those without a residential exemption. Tip of the iceberg. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Looking down the line, a number of projects, 10 to be exact, need to be addressed in the near future, town officials say, with a combined estimated price tag of $435.4 million. Fee said that this is the result of an island that has grown more in the last 30 years than it did in the previous 300 years. When you add 1% more houses, the expenses just don't go up 1%. It's not linear, he said. They get deferred, and eventually the bill comes due, and I think that that's where we are. A lot of deferred infrastructure, a lot of deferred expenses, and the bill is coming due. The construction of a new island home is the big-ticket item that looms above all the other spending proposals. Town manager Libby Gibson said it could affect how voters consider all the other requests. This is the biggest project we've ever undertaken, she said. We are concerned that if it gets approved, will other projects get approved? And it's possible Our Island Home won't pass, and what the alternatives would be. One of those likely alternatives is that the town would get out of the nursing home business. It is the only remaining municipality in the state that operates a nursing home, and it is expensive. Taxpayers already subsidize the existing Our Island Home to the tune of about $4 million a year. Having the nursing home is good for the community, but it's also very, very expensive, and we have a lot of big projects coming down the road, Gibson said. Select Board Chair Brooke Moore noted that the town has already spent a lot of time and money in the analysis and design of a new nursing home, and the upcoming town meeting vote feels like it's a bit of a referendum on if we want to continue to have a municipally operated nursing home. Another big ask. But the town is considering nearly as big an ask later in the year, $80 million for the construction of a new DPW facility. If passed, it would add approximately $175 to the annual tax bill for a $2 million home with a residential exemption. Then there are major projects still on the horizon, including the Steamboat Wharf coastal resilience efforts, $120 million, a new middle school building, $85 million, a central municipal building, $56 million, Baxter Road relocation, $36 million, as well as a number of other seven-figured sewer extensions. Fee thinks that there are ways to soften the blow somewhat, one being betterment fees, where the properties directly benefiting from a taxpayer-funded project like a sewer extension or erosion control measures would pay a greater amount than the average unaffected taxpayer. The other option, he said, is for the town to increase its fee schedule more often for services like sewer connections and landfill use. If you charge a little more for fees and things, if you bump things up a little bit every year so people can still afford it, if you budget and build in maintenance and things, it's cheaper to take care of something than to build a new one every 30 to 40 years. But at the end of the day, there is no free lunch. Our last story today is headlined, Beware Electricity Supply Scams, November the 28th. Town officials are urging residents and businesses to be cautious of deceptive electricity supply calls. Recent reports indicate a rise in suspicious and misleading sales calls targeting Nantucket residences and businesses. Some callers may claim to represent National Grid, National Power Choice, or the town of Nantucket. These calls are from private companies either attempting to sell services or scam personal information. National Grid does not call about electric rates, discounts, gift cards, or billing. Neither National Grid nor the town of Nantucket has authorized anyone to make sales calls on their behalf. What to do if you receive such calls? 1. Ignore or hang up. 2. If you're unsure whether the call is legitimate, verify with the town's energy office at 508-325-5379 or National Grid at 800-322-3223 before agreeing to any offer. Private suppliers may offer low introductory rates that quickly escalate or include complicated contracts with hidden fees and costly penalties for ending contracts early. Be cautious of misleading claims and always review terms carefully before switching. If you decide to switch suppliers, ensure that you understand the risks and the benefits. Never share your National Grid account number unless you're certain of the company's legitimacy and have decided to switch. If you experience misleading, pushy, or deceptive interactions with a electricity supplier, please report them to the Department of Public Utilities Consumer Division, 617-737-2836 or dpuconsumer.complaints@state.ma.us. For additional questions, contact Town Energy Coordinator Lauren Sinatra at lsinatra@nantucket-ma.gov. That's all I have time for. This is your reader, Chuck Gifford, saying goodbye, and thanks for listening.